Okay, hi everyone. Thank you for joining us on this video. Today we have someone special with us. This is Mrs. Sudhanshu, and today we're going to be speaking about something very important and something that I feel, and as heads up, we feel that we need to speak about children. And when I say children, we need to be inclusive in that term. And when we speak about education for children as well. One subject that I really wanted to understand more, to understand the children I work with, is to understand autism a little better. I've also met several parents in my experience as a teacher who had children who were diagnosed with autism. And from there, it was also a very sudden jump for me as a teacher personally to be in that classroom in a Montessori environment. Of course, following the child's needs, but I felt myself lacking in truly understanding what autism is. So, a little bit of research from my side, notwithstanding, I thought this needs to be spoken about a little more, and that's why I reached out to Action for Autism. And Sudhanshu Grover ma'am is here with us today, and she is a special educator. She has been working with Action for Autism for quite some time, and she's also a parent, and she is an adult who is diagnosed with autism herself. Um, so thank you so much, Sudhanshu ma'am, for making time for us today at Heads Up. And could you just share a little bit about your journey and introduce yourself better if I have not done justice to the same?
Thank you, Aishwarya. My journey started. I am basically a biochemist by background, and my journey started when my twin sons they were diagnosed autistic. So that is in the year 19. So they were born in 1997, and in the year 2000, when they were 3 years old, they were diagnosed autistic. And like most parents, it was the first time that I came across this word autism, and I took them to various doctors, and with a lot of misdiagnosis, finally they were diagnosed autistic. So then, when they were diagnosed at Aliyawar Jung Hospital in Mumbai, and there somebody told me about Action for Autism, that they are doing a wonderful job. So in the year 2000. I came to Action for Autism for the first time, and when I came here for the first time, it was a 3 days program. And then when I attended that, I knew I had to come again. So I came again and again. And then since 2001, I have been working with Action for Autism. So intermittently, I went back to my hometown, came back again. And then since 2001, like I said, I've been working. So it's been quite a journey. And I had worked with a lot of autistic individuals. Like I've been working since so many years. My own children are autistic, so I had worked with a lot of families, with a lot of autistic individuals, and it was in say 3 years back. I felt that I too needed to go for a diagnosis. I thought I'm autistic too, and I got my diagnosis done. And I was diagnosed autistic. So it's very recent that I've been diagnosed autistic myself. So that's been basically my journey. Yeah.
Okay. Definitely, we'll have to talk more about that because I don't know whether many adults are aware. I have no idea that you could get diagnosed so late as well. I mean, it's quite, and it tells you how broad the spectrum is and how we are all, falling on different parts of the spectrum, really, rather than saying someone is autistic or not. And we can't make that decision. At once. So thank you so much and for your work as well in creating more awareness through Action for Autism as well. But starting from the basics for those of our viewers watching, what would you say is autism and what would be some of the important signs to look out for in understanding that, okay, this child, for example, might have autism?
So, Aishwarya, autism is a neurological developmental condition that affects 2% of the human population. So, these are big words. I'll unpack these a little bit. So when we say neurological, it means something to do with the brain. And there are a lot of studies that have shown that structurally the brain of an autistic person is different from that of a non-autistic person. Also, the various parts of the brain, the way they communicate with each other, the functions of the brain, that is also different, right? And these changes in the brain, the difference in the brain, it radically affects the way the person is able to make sense of his world. So the way he receives the information from the senses, the way he perceives it, the way he responds to it, hence, is different. Also, autistic individuals may think differently. They may move differently. They may communicate differently. They may socialize, relate to people in a different way than non-autistic people. We say that it's a developmental condition means that autism begins before birth. It is during the developmental period when the little fetus is developing inside the mother's womb. It is decided then whether
Mhm.
it's going to be autistic or non-autistic. And so autistic people are born autistic. We never stop being autistic. We grow into autistic adults, and we live our entire lives being autistic. Yeah. Also, that developmentally autistic children are, or autistic people are, on a different trajectory altogether.
Mhm.
So there are certain milestones that they may achieve before their neurotypical peers. There may be some milestones that they may achieve later. They may achieve some milestones differently. Say motor milestones. Some may start walking early. Some may walk a little late. Some may actually not have the crawling process. They may shift on their hip, or may swim forward to move and then directly start walking. So they are not developmentally delayed, but because the other milestones that of that age, of that time, are met. So it's like they have these unevenness of skills, which is the hallmark of autism. So some areas you will find them doing beautifully, and completely opposite in the other, right? Also, I mentioned that it's a condition. It is a way of being. Like
Mhm.
my being a woman is my way of being, right? It's a condition. It's not an impairment. It's not pathological in nature. It is not something that you catch or you can transmit or it'll happen to you. Yeah, it's basically a condition. Yeah, and it affects 2% of the population. So one would say that every one person in 50 people may be autistic.
Okay.
The thing that you mentioned about the signs,
Thanks. Yeah.
uh, yeah, so the identifying features of autism are basically differences in communication and language. So the way a person may use his body language, that may be different. Some may not like to make a small talk, or some turn taking in conversations may be different. The communication style may be different. Also, socializing, the etiquettes, the norms, the rules, how the relationships are formed, how they are maintained, that may be different. Yeah. Also, the attention of autistic individuals, that may be different. So they are able to deeply focus. It's like a tunneled attention, right?
Oh.
Something in the middle is very brightly lit. So all their energies are focused on something that's in the middle, whereas the things that are there on the periphery are completely missed out. Right. And that is why you will see that they are very good at certain things. They know a lot of information. They have a lot of information about certain things, and they may find it difficult to switch between tasks. So if I'm doing something, I would want to continue doing that. To break from that may be difficult. The information processing, that may be different. So the way the information is assimilated, the application of information, the adaptation of that information. So say, for some autistic individuals to be able to generalize, they can do a particular skill with a particular set of people in a particular environment. But if the environment changes, or say the material is presented differently, then they may not be able to generalize. So the adaptation to new environments and situations, that may be difficult. Then the sensory processing is something that I talked about, the way the information is perceived by the senses, the way it is processed, the way the person responds. is different. And for a
Mhm.
non-autistic person, it is very difficult to imagine what it's like. So he may feel, why is this person overwhelmed? But the autistic person is hearing everything that's in the background, right? And is finding it really overwhelming. So, the sensory process, and this may occur in one sense, in more than one sense, in all senses,
Mm.
and it may vary on a day to day basis as well, right? Also, you'll find a lot of autistic individuals may have repetitive behaviors. They
Mm.
may stim, so they may say the same word over and over again, or the same phrase over and over again, or may have a motor mannerism that they want to do over and over again, right?
Mhm.
And there may be a need for sameness in the way of thinking, right?
Could you
Also,
give an
motor.
example of these motor movements? Because some children they flap their arms or
Yeah,
do their hair a lot. I mean, or
yeah.
am I guessing?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Some of them may twirl their hair, some may. And again, stimming is something that we all do. Yeah,
Yeah.
everyone does. All autistic behaviors are very human behaviors, right? There is nothing that an autistic individual does that a non autistic does not do. But it's just that autistic individuals may do it with more intensity, they may do it very frequently. Yeah, they may have behaviors which, so like, you were saying, the stimming is something we all do when we are stressed. So we may rock, we may twirl our hair, we may click the pen, or we may click our tongue to be
Mm.
able to concentrate, to be able to cope with the environment that's difficult, right?
Mm.
So they may stim, and they may stim more than non-autistic individuals may do, right?
Mhm.
Also, the motor control that I was talking about, some of them may appear very clumsy, some of them may be extremely agile, and some of them may have their body wanting to do something, but the brain is giving the command, but the body is not able to move. So they're kind of stuck, right? So there is a kind of a brain body disconnect that may happen, right? So actually, there is no one way of being autistic, right? If you see, every autistic individual is very different. Something that you were mentioning earlier, every autistic individual is very different from the other, right? And autism is a spectrum. Yeah,
So you see one child with autism, you've seen one child with autism. You can't say
absolutely,
that's so true.
absolutely.
I mean, I'm just thinking, and every other person has some trait or other, and it's very human. But as you said, the intensity is something to look for, and that's why observation plays a big role in also finding out more about how the child is feeling. So when I talk about children, you mentioned that things like it is a developmental condition and therefore it starts even before birth. But at what age or developmental stage can autism be identified? And if so, how would you go about it? Like, how would you even say that a person is having autism? So if you can help parents and people watching this understand that.
Yeah, so autism can be identified at 18 months or younger, right? And by the age of 3, a diagnosis made by an experienced professional is usually considered quite reliable. However, many children do not receive a final diagnosis till they are much older, and some people are not diagnosed until they are adolescents or adults, right? So actually, there is no biomarker, no medical test, no blood test for autism, right? And usually, the first person that parents go to when they have any concerns regarding the development of their child is a pediatrician, right? So it's usually a pediatrician who diagnoses a child, and sometimes there may be a multidisciplinary team that's involved. So there may be a speech language assessment, there may be an occupational therapy, there may be a psychologist. They all substantiate the diagnosis. Their reports substantiate the diagnosis. In case of adults, it's usually the psychiatrist or the psychologist who makes the diagnosis. And so what they do is they look at the child's developmental history, they look at the child's play, they look at the child's behavior to make a diagnosis. And there are certain tools like the childhood autism rating scales, the CARS, or the Autism Diagnostics Observation Schedule, or the ADOS, or the Autism Diagnosis Interview, ADI. These are tools that are derived from the diagnostic manuals, the DSM-5 and the ICD-10. So they're based on that, and this is how basically a diagnosis is done. So
I think
yeah.
that's a lot of information. Thank you so much. I'll definitely try to mention all of the forms that you mentioned in the caption to the video. But that brings me to the next question as to how important is it to identify this earlier? I mean, what would be the different way in which, I mean, for example, I was very surprised to learn that you were recently diagnosed with autism. So what difference does it make to be diagnosed earlier, and how would things have changed for you, or of course for children across the spectrum? If you can just
So early intervention, it definitely helps. It helps not only the child but also the parents. So, like I said, we've been working intensively with parents. We have been working on early interventions since years, and we've seen that early interventions give children a better start, a better chance of developing to their fullest potential. Right. So the sooner the child gets the help, the greater his chance of learning and developing. And even research has shown that if you start with the child early, there is, it can improve the child's holistic development, right? The benefits for parents are also there. Like I mentioned, it benefits parental relationships. So parents can learn early, as to how they can help a child mentally, or say emotionally, or physically, to the various stages of life. They can learn to interact with their child, bond with their child, engage with their child, right? And can, in this process, be trained, understand, prepare themselves for the journey ahead, right? So,
I think it's
most,
not just parents. I think as a teacher, I remembered how much I struggled to communicate with this child, and
yeah,
there was just that one moment where I finally got through what she was trying to say. She wanted her bag, and that moment she clicked, and she just saw me, and I felt so, you feel very underprepared for that moment. And I felt how unfair it is that I did not know how to talk to her. And she was communicating through the means she could. She was, I think, around 5 years old. Absolutely, early diagnosis will help. The environment around the child, the team of people. It takes a village to raise a child. So I think that's why
absolutely.
it's very important, and I wanted to highlight that. So, coming to that, as a child's parent or teacher, and in today's world, we are seeing a lot of parents who are homeschooling as well. One of the many reasons could be even that their child needs a different pace and of learning, or it could be that the school is not providing what you're needing. So and in today's world, yes, the pandemic has seen a lot of parents moving to homeschool. So as a parent, as a teacher, or as a homeschooling parent, what are some things that we can do to help a child with autism? And if we know that the child is diagnosed with autism, what would be step one, two, three, for example?
Yeah, so I think, if today one was to surf the internet, one would see a lot of programs, a lot of treatment programs, therapies, strategies that are available, right? And usually, the teachers, they use these strategies, they apply these strategies, interventions. Parents take children for these interventions. Now, unfortunately, these interventions are focused on changing the child. They want to normalize the child. They want to delete the autism, remove the autism. And one thing everyone has to remember is that many more outcomes are likely to arise if the autistic individuals or autistic child is engaged as unique individuals. They are appreciated for their skills and aptitudes, their way of communication, their social preferences. So, the key is to connect with them, not to understand them, not to change them for who they are. And I think that is one of the most important things that parents, teachers, and everyone around the child or the individual needs to remember, any program should focus on providing the child autonomy and agency, acceptance, and authenticity, celebrating the child for who he is. So I think that is the most important thing.
Mhm.
Additionally, I would say, we know that a lot of autistic children, they are able to understand better when they see things rather than hear things, right? So when things are provided in a visual format, then they are able to understand more. So you would want to, as teachers, as parents, you would want to create an environment which is using a lot of visuals, which is structured. So if it's a classroom, set it up in a way that the child knows what is expected, what is he supposed to do when he comes to that area, providing maps, providing visually marked workstations free from
Trackers for the day
distractions.
and all
Yeah,
things like that.
absolutely. Giving them tools, like we call it a schedule, the visual timetable, so that he
Mhm.
knows what is coming in his day, what his day looks like, right? So he knows that this is going to happen in this order. These are the choices that are available to me. This is what this change is happening. So all of that, right? And everyone learns when they are in a safe environment, right? When they are not stressed. And for parents and teachers, it's important to create an environment that's safe, that where the person feels relaxed, where he feels that he's going to be secure here. So I think those are the things. Also, like I was saying, things have changed drastically from what they were earlier. Like when my children were diagnosed versus now when I'm diagnosed, things are very different. And the good thing is that there are a lot of autistic individuals who have come forward, who have written books, who have their own YouTube channels, who
Yeah.
have their a lot of stuff that's available, which is written by autistic individuals. So you would want to learn from their experiences, not just pick up these strategies and start applying, but actually read their experiences, learn from them, ask for them, and provide accommodations. Like there, usually the goal. I don't know, somehow with autistic children, it is not easy for parents and teachers to give them the accommodations that they want. Now, these accommodations that they want are not very expensive, right? But they need these. So rather than, just as you would not have a goal for, say, a girl, say, Isha, who's wearing reading glasses, you won't have a goal like Isha will learn to read without
Without
her
her
reading
voice.
glasses for 80% of the opportunities that are presented to her, right? Same way, you would not have to, you don't want to have a goal. You want to provide them with alternative and augmentative means of communication. You would want to provide them with a good schedule. I think doing all of this will make a lot of difference, and the child will definitely be able to learn. Also, keeping the environment sensory friendly. I think that's very, very important.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
That's something
um,
I thought of as well. So definitely, the accommodations that you're saying, and I understand could be as something as simple as technology, and schools and people frown upon that. Whereas
yeah.
I've seen in a YouTube channel, Carly, if I'm not wrong, she came up. She was autistic, and she had no means of communication till one day she typed HELP on her laptop, and that was the start. And she's doing an amazing talk show on YouTube purely through typing
Yeah.
her words out. And definitely, we need to look at the way children communicate and connect, and this is something I absolutely stand for. So thank you so much for reiterating that as well over here. So I think that moves me the part where you said about sensory processing and visual sense. So, as a Montessori teacher, I'm sure you might have heard of the Montessori environment and the method of learning. So, as a Montessori teacher, I do believe that the Montessori classroom is meant for all children, and I have seen children with autism there as well. And of course, like a few accommodations that I remember the special educator telling me was that something hanging on the wall like a, a belt buckle frame, she had put it down on the shelf, and I asked her what was the reason, and she said no, the child is feeling upset when it moves, and I had to do that. And I thought that was perfectly in line with the Montessori method. It doesn't have to be hung up there and easy to pick. It can be on the shelf because we are following the child. But having said that, is the Montessori method truly beneficial to children, or are there any challenges? What do you think about it? Is there anything you can share?
So I think the Montessori system, it usually works quite well with autistic children, because there is a lot of focus on consistency, on, say, building up of routines, which is something autistic individuals thrive on. So it usually works beautifully, like I said. Also, there is a lot of movement,
Mm.
which is something that doesn't happen in a regular school, in a mainstream school. The traditional methods require you to sit for long, not explore the material. You got to learn a lot through listening, which does not happen in a
Mm.
Montessori. So I think that is where Montessori really helps. The activities are made more hands-on, more concrete activities
Mm.
before they move to abstract, which actually works beautifully. And that they are some of the things that we do at our school as well. We have a day program also. So that's what we do. We kind of make things more concrete, and then we move to more abstract things. So that works beautifully for autistic children. Also, I think the practical activities, the practical life activities, they help the child develop his motor skills, his coordination, also giving an awareness about his body in space. That may be very difficult for some children. And
Right.
that's why they may feel the walls, you'll see, or they like to, lie down on the ground, because that's how they understand where their body is in space. So these activities actually help the child become more aware of his body parts in space, which is wonderful. Also, the gentle thing about Montessori, like where every child is allowed to learn on his own pace. There is a mixed kind of a group, so you get a chance to be with older peers as well, and that really promotes acceptance and kindness. So I think that works very beautifully. Also, I think the teachers are the Montessori teachers are, they value diversity. They respect the rights of all children. So I think it works beautifully for most children. For some children, the open classrooms and the open learning spaces, that may sometimes be uh, distracting. Some of them might find it overwhelming.
Mm.
So some may not want to engage in the materials, like the blindfolded, where children are blindfolded and all the senses are used. So some may not want to feel certain textures, or may not like to be blindfolded. But other than that, I don't think there are any other challenges that I can think of the Montessori method.
Right, right. I was thinking on the same lines, and again, it falls on the guide, the Montessori teacher in the classroom, to remember that we are there for the child, and like my colleague did, it's important to keep in mind what that child is comfortable with and make the accommodations accordingly. So, thank you so much for sharing that as well. I think definitely every person in a Montessori environment, please remember that if we do not follow the child, we are not following what Dr. Maria Montessori actually spoke about, and definitely don't say no to a child with autism just because we are not equipped with the right tools. So, on that note, how would a person like myself learn more about autism? And I see a lot of information on Action for Autism, the website, and all of it. So, you could you please share as to what we can learn, not only as teachers but as parents of children with autism? What can we learn, and how can we learn it from Action from Autism, and what do they offer? Things like that.
Sure. So at AFA, we offer, we cater to the needs of people with autism as well as their families. So we work across age groups and across the spectrum of support needs, right? So we have the educational program, which is in the form of the Open Day program, something that I was talking about earlier. So here, this is for children between the ages of 3 and 18. We have the parent-child training program. That's an intensive 10 to 12 week, so almost like 3 months program, where which helps the parents learn.
Mhm.
As well as, they learn to work with their children, and it empowers the parents to become therapists for their own children. At AFA, we strongly believe that autism is not a condition where, where a therapist needs to work. Parents can learn, they can become therapists as well. So that is a program that we have. We have the individualized education program. We have a program for outstation families.
Mhm.
So, parents from far-flung areas of the country, they can also come and be a part of the programs. They can learn. Like I said, we started with a 3 day program. When my children were diagnosed, I started with a 3 day program. So that is something that they can do. Yeah. Also, we have the B.Ed and the D.Ed programs. So these are on-site, full-term degree and diploma programs that are recognized by the Rehabilitation Council of India,
Mhm.
and we also having the workshops. So some of them are by the AFA staff. Otherwise, we have a lot of workshops from professionals across India and across the world. So those are things that, people can
Amazing.
join and learn. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you. Is there anything that's online at the moment, considering the current situation? Is there anything that is being offered?
Online, we are having a lot of workshops. We keep having workshops every month. So you could go to our website. Parents can go to website, and they can find out more about these workshops. Also, the parent-child training program, the school program, all of this is happening online currently.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
so yes, so
So you're
definitely,
even sensitizing schools and their staff as well about.
absolutely,
Okay. That's.
absolutely. That is a part of, we try and go to schools, mainstream schools, try and sensitize them.
Mhm. I'm happy to see that there's so much of awareness and growth about autism, be it in media as well, popular media as well as written, and recently even a TV show that I love, Atypical. I don't know if you've heard of it on
Yes,
Netflix.
yes.
So yeah,
Yeah.
there's so much to learn about and learn from people, wonderful people across the world. But thank you so much for making time for us today at EDSA, because you gave us quite a chunk of time, and I think there were so many precise, clear points, for actionable points that we could take away from this conversation. Definitely, it means a lot to us at EDSA that we were able to have this conversation. So thank you so much. I'd like to wrap it up, and I will be definitely putting all the links to whatever you said. I will be putting the website and all of that in the caption. And I'll also be linking AFA's page, so that if anyone wants to reach out to them, they can too. So thank you so much, Sudhanshu ma'am,
Thank
for
you.
being here today.
Thank you, Swarya. Thank you so much.